Hello. Today I will be bringing you the Yerevan, or well, as it's really called, it's the Kiev, the new Tier 8 Kiev. Now, this ship has always had a special place in my heart because, well, the Kiev was one of the first ships that I really loved in this game. It's tier 7 to tier 9 matchmaking, so pretty common stuff that you usually face. Anyway, the Kiev has been a ship that I've always loved in this game. In fact, one of my first vids that actually got like really popular and probably like helped make myself known was actually in the Kiev. The old Kiev, I broke like 200k damage in a game in it, and that was kind of what like made my YouTube channel fairly known. So this one has always had a special place for me. First of all, of course, I love the design of it. I'm running the Valentine's camo because I don't think there's any camo that fits the Soviet ships as well as the Valentine's camo, that lovely communist red on them. But the ship feels very similar to the old pre-nerf Kiev. For those that don't remember, back in the day the Kiev actually had a ton more HP. But it was considered a bit too overpowered for tier 7. So they dialed down the HP perhaps a bit too aggressively. They took it down to 12.8k health. And 12.8k health on a gunboat that has like 9km concealment, or with camo 8.7, well, that's pretty awkward to play with. And the Kiev lost a lot of its power, and it was no longer as fun to play because you couldn't really be as aggressive in it. So obviously Wargaming also recognized this issue, so they have made some changes to this ship. First of all, the health has been significantly buffed. From the 12.8k HP of the old Kiev, the Yerevan, or Yerevan, sorry, has 16.8. So that's a 4k health increase, which is of course significant. I'm running Survivability Expert, hence why I got 19k HP. But that's of course a pretty significant increase. But in order to balance that out, they instead place it against tier 8s, which makes perfect sense, especially considering all the power creeps in the game. I feel like tier 8 fits this ship better. Another change you might see is the torpedoes are launched into that smoke. Well, first of all, the Akatsuki parked in the smoke right in front of us. That's never a good way to do it. I'm hoping this Fletcher will move out on scout now, since sitting, if you got a Soviet DD next to you and you're a US DD, then you should be scouting actively for him because he can help you out with the gun power that the US DDs don't have, but this guy is sitting here. Anyway, as you can see, I landed another torp, as these torps are still going and still going and still going, and that's because the torps have also gotten a significant change. They've lost about 3k damage from the upgraded Kiev torps that have 18k. These ones only did 14.4, so almost what, 13.5, 13.6k damage that have been lost. And they've also lost 10 knots of speed, from 65 knots to 55 knots. But in return, they now have 8 kilometers of range, and they have 1.1 km concealment, the expected radar. I knew someone was sneaking up because my torpedoes hit something. I thought it was the Donskoy, but there was actually an Atlanta that was sneaking up, and he obviously ate one of my torps pushing in through that smoke. He managed to detonate, the Donskoy managed to detonate the Fletcher that was sitting in my smoke, so I guess he got very swift karma for sitting still in the smoke when you know there's radar cruisers around. Anyway, back to the torps. They've lost 10 knots of speed, but in return they have gone from 4 kilometers of range to 8 kilometers of range with 1.1 concealment on the torpedoes. That is of course a very significant change because it gives them a lot more versatility. They are much more useful now. You can torp smokes close, or if you got Royal Navy cruisers sitting far back, Kutuzovs and such, you can actually use the torps without risking running into their hydro range. So overall, a much needed buff in order to put this into tier 8 gameplay, especially since when you're tier 8 you might end up against tier 10s, and I think it much needed that increase in range. AA is also slightly improved, but in general, if you don't have defensive AA on ADD, you're just gonna struggle. I mean, you're straight up gonna struggle shooting down any planes at all. Is this an AFK Mayhem? Oh, hello, Mr. Mayhem. Please feed me your damage, XP, whatever. Donskoy is shooting me. I'm gonna park behind this island so I can just stealth far. Now, AA slightly better, but really it's still not significant. You're not going to be shooting down anything in this thing. This is no Grozovoi. It's still a gun. This is of course the gunboat line, so it's not going to be doing much. Maneuverability is still pretty much the same. It's still incredibly fast, With speed flag, I think you'll do like 4 or 44 knots, which is exactly the same as the old Kiev. The old Kiev was also extremely fast and very agile, which this has kept the same characteristics, and that's of course what made the Kiev so much fun to play, is that ability to weave in and out and dodge shells and so forth. Guns and the range are identical. It's actually pretty humorous that when you use AFT, as you of course should use, you get 14.5 range on the Yerevan, and then you get 13.9 on the Udaloy, or well, the new Udaloy, it's the same as the old one, and 13.5 on Khabarovsk. So you actually, or Khabarovsk, you actually lose range the higher tier you go, but of course you gain gun power, so it's an acceptable trade. But the Kiev is of course one of the most comfortable DDs, or this new Kiev especially is one of the more comfortable DDs to play, because having 14.5 range on a gunboat means it's pretty easy to pick fights against cruisers and battleships at range without risking eating too much damage in return. The camo is actually the same. They both have 9 km base concealment. The new Kiev, just like the old Kiev, they both have 9 km base concealment. With the camo, you can drop it on the current Kiev to 8.7, of course. But the thing with the Yerevan is that it can actually slot the tier 8 module, since it's a tier 8 now. So instead of having 8.7 concealment, you can get away with 7.9. And this is of course very significant because, well, it allows you to outspot a lot of targets that you would otherwise struggle with. For example, Belfast, you can outspot it. You have a bigger buffer against ships like Atlanta and Otago, and even Zao in case you face up against Zaos. And that's of course highly needed and a great thing. Fletcher picks a gunfight. At this close range, the Fletcher has an advantage. Well, that is if he would fire. It looks like he's trying to torp me. Looking at the way he's turning, I'm pretty sure he's trying to torp me. Of course, the way you fight US gunboats in Russian gunboats is what I'm showing here. You angle away and you create distance. The further away you are, the more his guns suffer, whereas your railguns don't really suffer at all from the increased distance. Of course, in return, USDDs have much better DPM than you have, but when you create distance, they lose that DPM advantage because they can't land as many shells because, well, they have these really lazy arcs. Already at 7 km, well, he struggles to hit me, whereas of course I have no such issues. So whenever you face US gunboats, well, this is just how you used to play it in the Kiev as well, and how you play it in the Tashkent, Khabarovsk, all of these. When you face USDDs, you turn around and you start kiting, and you just create some distance and basically burn them to death from range. Gun sounds and guns in general are extremely satisfying. It's of course identical to the Kiev's, but the Kiev's guns, they were never a weakness at all. The Kiev's guns were always fantastic. And they worked just as fine as tier 8. In fact, considering the other buffs it got, the significant HP buff and slightly better concealment, I feel that it's a good thing they didn't really buff the guns anymore, because already it's a bit hard to tell, is this ship overpowered? I wouldn't say it is overpowered, because once again, it's still quite easy to counter it as an enemy DD. I mean, you shouldn't be picking fights like the Fletcher did. You shouldn't be charging out when you know they have enemy DDs and you just use your smoke to smoke up the Bismarck and so forth. So you still have a huge spotting advantage. In fact, every tier 8 DD is going to be able to outspot this thing still. That hasn't changed. Even the German DDs will outspot you. Stuff like Benson, who gets 5.8 concealment, and Kageros that get even better concealment. They're all going to see this thing a mile away. So it's kind of like, it's the Khabarovsk of tier 8 at this point. It's fast, it's got great gun power, it's pretty sturdy in terms of tankiness, but the only way you really kill enemy DDs if they make the mistake of engaging you. If they actively just avoid you, then you're gonna struggle to actually kill them. Of course, you can hunt them down if you get a general idea of where they are. If they open up fire, you are very good at hunting them down. I mean, nothing's going to outrun you. The fantastic speed combined with speed boost and speed flag, it pops you into something like almost 48 knots of speed, so nothing is going to outrun you. Of course, having that sort of speed also makes up for one of the weaknesses many DDs have, which is being focused by carriers. When you are faster than 40 knots, significantly faster especially, you can dodge carrier drops quite easily because you're faster than the torpedoes that the carrier drops. Donskoy, I don't mind picking a fight, he only has 10k HP, and at this range he's going to struggle to hit me, and even if he does, I do a fair amount of DPM. Now of course I'm also running Adrenaline Rush on this new Kiev, or on this Yerevan. The Adrenaline Rush of course favors this kind of long range gunfighting a lot, since it increases your DPM significantly the lower you go. So at long range I can really harass the hell out of this dude. I'm slightly shifting course to make myself a bit harder to hit. I don't think he has a repair, because he would probably repair that fire since he's already so low. I'm just gonna make sure I can finish him off, need a couple more hits. He does get a hit on me and double fire, but he's slipping behind cover, so I can pop my heal. Looks like the Leningrad popped smoke in the hopes of killing me, but the only thing spotting me was the Donskoy. He didn't really take into account the surroundings. So I'm honestly just gonna park here, take the cap, and wait to see if the Leningrad pops out. The Leningrad, kind of like versus the Kiev, the Leningrad has advantages, but in a straight up gunfight, the Kiev beats the Leningrad, and in, well, gunfight wise, not really HP wise, but this new Yerevan has pretty much every advantage in a gunfight against the Leningrad. So this guy bailing out like he did, well, it was good because I was of course torping the smoke, but he's gonna struggle dealing with this gunpowder that you can bring. The accuracy is of course good, but hey, exactly like the Kiev in this case. But overall I feel like, that was a good volley. Overall I feel like this new Yerevan brings back the old Kiev, which was so much fun to play. In fact, one of the most fun ships in the game at the time. You got some tankiness this time. You don't feel like the new Kiev, which is, well, the T7 Kiev, which basically has no HP. One unlucky battleship penetration and you're pretty much half dead. You no longer suffer from that, so you can actually do these kind of fun things. You can sail around the map, picking fights with everyone, shoot at everyone, and just like have a good time with it. And I feel like this new Yerevan brings it back, and I've been enjoying it a lot. I did get an unofficial Kraken there. Of course I can't get any achievements on this ship, otherwise I would probably have high caliber, Confederate, the usual stuff. But considering this is of course the test ships, we don't get any achievements for them, so I get an unofficial Kraken, I guess. The game ends, only 100k damage, but then again, I was shooting mostly DDs. The basics, or the XP speaks for itself. It was the first win, so I got the daily win bonus. Of course, it's weekend as well, so I got that tacked on. Or I played this game yesterday when it was weekend, so... Yerevan, 3k base XP, or 3.1k, which is pretty fantastic. So, this ship does really well against higher tiers. Of course there are situations where it struggles. I mean, if you get cruisers that actively hunt you and actively take the shots at you, you're gonna of course have a hard time, like any gunboat. But it's kinda like the Khabarovsk in this case. It really is like a tier 8 Khabarovsk, or maybe a tier 8 Udaloy, considering it handles better than the Khabarovsk does. So I feel like this gives a pretty good taste of what's going to happen higher up in the gunboat line. If you enjoy playing the Yerevan, you will probably enjoy playing the Khabarovsk, because the playstyles are quite similar. Damage wise, well, not really much to talk about. The only torps I landed were at the start, and mostly it was just shooting a bunch of DDs, hence the quite low damage but the very high XP rewards. I'll go over my recommended build that I'm using right now, even though of course all of this is massively subject to change, because all these DDs are works in progress. Right, moving on. Consumable wise, of course, everything premium, because I can afford it. If you can't afford it, at least get the smoke for premium. Even though I didn't really use it much the game, I think I didn't smoke up once, because I wasn't really being pressured and needed to use it. Main armaments 1, aiming system mod 1. I don't see the point for the AA, because, well, as I said, the AA really isn't that special, so there's not much point to it. Propulsion, you don't want to lose engine, you have a good rudder shift, so you can get away with using acceleration. And finally concealment, which is of course the new thing considering the old Kiev. Upgrade wise, probably range. Once, as usual on gunboats, you want the range first to give you that comfort, then you go for the hull and the torpedo upgrades. That's pretty usual. Captain perks wise, preventive maintenance, you don't want to lose turrets or torpedoes. Last stand, pretty must have. I love Adrenaline Rush on. This is actually the build I'm testing on the new Kaba, the one with the heal. That's why I run Superintendent and Survivability Expert, and of course Advanced Firing Training for the additional range. In this game, however, Superintendent was of course a bit useless since I actually didn't smoke up once the entire game. But that reminds me of the old Kiev where I only really smoked up when I really needed it, and I could get away without using it. In fact, I've not been using vigilance on these boats because I've been focusing so much on speed and keeping on the move, so I never really had to actively dodge that many torps. We will see if this will make it to my final build. Of course, this is just kind of in the testing phases, hence why I'm just quickly going over this part. Anyway, that is the new tier 8 Kiev, and so far it seems like a heck of a lot of fun.